Hi guys, welcome back or welcome to Switch to Life. And in today's video, we are going to be ranking all of the DreamWorks protagonists from the movies. I wanted to include some from the TV show, but unfortunately, this was the only list I could find. So, yeah. With that out of the way, let's get into it. If you want to try this list for yourself, there is a tier maker link down below in the description of the video. So without further ado, let's get started. So this is actually going to be a bit different because we're going to put these characters in 1v1 combat with Poe. Basically, anyone who can defeat Poe goes in the can defeat Poe. Anyone who has a chance of defeating Poe, you get the gist. So, starting off, we have Z from Ants. And, I mean, come on. Is there really any other option? Next, we have Moses. So, the thing about Moses is he probably could defeat Poe. The question is that with Moses, he uses the power of God and he does God's wonders. But would the God of Moses be willing to allow Poe to be defeated? No, I think not. With that in mind, I will think that he has a good chance of defeating Poe if God said yes, but there's still a chance God would say no, and thus Moses wouldn't have any power when fighting Poe, and thus he'd be left on his own and at the mercy of him. Next we have Miguel, and unfortunately, while Miguel is pretty good at sword fighting, I'd still say he has no chance of defeating Poe. But with Tulio, I'd say he has a slight chance of defeating Poe because unlike Miguel, Tulio is really smart and he thinks ahead, but he still doesn't have that much of a chance simply due to the fact that he, he's not really a skilled fighter, and while he does occasionally know how to use a sword, he doesn't do it well enough that I think he could defeat Poe unless he was caught off his guard. Next, we have Ginger from the Chicken Run series, and same thing with Rocky. Both characters, I believe, have no chance of defeating Poe, but they're probably better off than Z. Finally, we have Shrek. What's great about Shrek is that he can pull some punches and his headbutt, which is kind of his signature move. So, with that in mind, I believe he probably has a good chance of defeating Poe. The question is, Poe would most likely use the whooshy finger hold on him, and even with all those fighting skills, Shrek would not be able to withstand that. Then we have Spirit, Stallion, and the Cimarron, and he could probably end up giving Poe a swift kick to the gut, and it's a pretty big gut, so real lot of surface area to kick there. But in the end, he's only a horse. He's probably not a good fighter compared to a kung fu master, and really his only saving grace is simply due to the fact that since he has no fingers, Poe can't do the whooshy finger hold on him. Next, we have Sinbad, and he probably has a good chance of defeating Poe. He's a skilled fighter with and without a sword. He's smart, probably smarter than Poe, but when it comes to powers, they're really limited and probably not enough to save him. Next, we have Oscar, and this one, Oscar's probably worse off than Z is. See, if Poe was to be brought underwater to fight Oscar, all Oscar would have to do is just make sure Poe doesn't reach the surface to gulp for air. But even then, he's a pretty big panda. I'm sure Oscar would not be able to do that. And if Oscar was brought up to land to fight Poe, forget it. The fight's never gonna happen. Next, we have Alex the Lion. Being a lion, he has some pretty great he has some weapons at his disposal, namely his speed, agility, claws, and teeth. He's also pretty smart when compared to the rest of the Madagascar gang, but probably not as smart as Poe, and thus would probably still be defeated by him. Next, we have Wallace. Wallace is a really great inventor, and he could probably come up with an invention that would defeat Poe. Problem is, he needs time to do that, and he's really his only problem I can see is him misjudging Poe, because he's not a great judge of character, and user error with the machines that he builds. And that's the fact he needs time to build the machine, and he has a slight chance, but still no chance. We have Gromit, who is slightly better of a fighter than Wallace, but not enough that I would consider him more than having a slight chance. Next, we have RJ and Vern from Over the Hedge. RJ is really good, especially when it comes to his tool set at his disposal. He also knows how to hide, and he's a master manipulator. He probably has a slight chance of defeating Poe, but with hardly any animal utilities at his belt and no fighting skills, probably not enough to defeat him. Plus, the thing is that raccoons actually do have fingers, so whooshy finger hold, poof. With Vern, it's actually worse off. He has no chance of defeating Poe, like, at all. I would actually say he's probably here. Really, the only thing I would say that Vern has that Poe would stop attacking him for is the fact that he's a turtle and remind him of Oogway. But even then, I don't think it would be enough to defeat Poe, and thus no chance whatsoever. Finally, we have Rodney from Flushed Away, our last Aardman film. And well, I mean, come on, he's a rat. He's great at coming out of situations with enemies that are his size, but with an enemy the size of Poe, probably not. He's also not that great of a fighter to begin with. With Barry B. Benson, he's probably worse off than Rodney, but the fact that he can fly and most likely sting Poe, which would cause Poe an intense amount of pain, and he's so small that Poe wouldn't be able to do the whooshy finger hold on him, but one swat or one sting, and Barry dies, and Poe survives. That's it. With Ginormica, she's probably our first candidate who can defeat Poe. Same thing with Bob, and he's probably the best one so far. The fact of the matter is that while Ginormica is really big and could probably crush Poe the same way Poe could crush Z, with Bob, if he tried to do the whooshy finger hold on Bob, his hand would end up inside of Bob, and if Bob really wanted to, he would dissolve that hand and eat it. And add that to the fact that maybe Bob is indestructible and he cannot die without that whooshy finger hold, then yeah, I would say Poe would definitely be defeated. And Ginormica would probably squash Poe before he would be able to grab a whooshy finger hold on her. When it comes to Hiccup and Toothless, I feel like they could defeat Poe if they were working together. If going solo, Hiccup would probably die, and Toothless would probably try to... he would probably be able to kill Poe on his own, but when they are together, they're pretty much unstoppable. But they're still at the bottom of this can defeat Poe list, simply due to the fact that, unlike Bob, they're not immortal. And really, the only thing I can see happening that when it comes to the whooshy finger hold, I would say that Poe would probably be able to use it on Hiccup, but not on Toothless, because Toothless doesn't have fingers. He has claws. Next, we have Megamind, and I would say he has a great chance of defeating Poe. The problem is that he's pretty reliant on his technology, and Poe would most likely see him as, whoa, dude, that is so cool. But in the end, he's still a normal. Without his tech, he has no fighting skills. And while he is super smart and a master manipulator, I definitely would say that one whooshy finger hold would most likely result in his death. But the good news is that being a master manipulator, he has a pretty great chance of defeating Poe. along with his technology. Next, we have Puss in Boots, and he probably is better than Alex when it comes to defeating Po, because like Hiccup, he's a blade user, which means that they wouldn't be fighting in hand-to-hand combat, which makes it harder for Po to do the whooshy finger hold. Add that to the fact that in the event he loses his sword, he can rely on his size, agility, claws, fangs, and of course, the boots to get the job done. Problem is, I don't think he would actually be able to kill Po, but he would definitely be able to defeat him. Next, we have Jack Frost. Jack Frost being immortal, well, you got to admit that he's probably at the top of this list simply due to the fact that unless children stop believing in him, he can't die. And if Po was to do the whooshy finger hold on him, I'm pretty sure Jack Frost would have enough chi to be able to make his way out. Next, we have Eep and Grug. Both of these characters are pretty skilled fighters and they're really strong, but when it comes to smarts, they're not that smart. Especially Grug. He has one great idea, but that's about all it gets him. Yeah, I would say they both have slight chances of defeating Po, but not enough that I would rank them as good chances. Next we have Turbo, and if it was a race, Turbo would win out of every single character on this list. Problem is, it's not a race, it's a fight to the death or hand-to-hand combat, and while his real save from grace would be that he has no hands, so no whooshy finger hold, but unfortunately, being a small snail and having no fighting skills, he would most likely die, and thus have no chance of defeating Po. Probably about there, that seems right. Then we come to Mr. Peabody. Of these mortal characters who can die, Mr. Peabody stands the best shot. The thing is, Mr. Peabody is a master of the martial arts. He's also a mastermind and a master manipulator, great with technology, and an inventor. Not to mention the fact that he could anticipate Po's every single move, and even if he was grabbed in the whooshy finger hold and had no idea what it was, I'm pretty sure he would be like, oh, what is this? Po would be so distracted in telling him that he would take advantage of the situation and probably defeat Po. When it comes to Sherman, however, none of that can be said. Not a skilled fighter, not a manipulator. He's pretty smart when it comes to history, but I mean, when is that going to help you in a fight to the death? So I would most likely put him under he has no chance. Maybe more so than Ginger, but not as much as Vern. Okay, maybe more than Vern if it weren't for the fact that Vern was a turtle, but being a turtle, I'm going to put him above Sherman. Next we have Skipper. Skipper, Kowalski, Rico, and Private, all of which are skilled fighters, but they are all going to be ranked individually. When it comes down to it, Skipper is a no-nonsense fighter who would do anything to defeat his opponent. And Kowalski, he is really smart and probably has the best shot at defeating Po in a game of, a game of brains, other than Mr. Peabody, of course. And when it comes to Rico, he's a wild card. Po would never be able to anticipate his movements. Really, the only person I would see who only has a slight chance of defeating Po would be Private. And I would say he's probably around there. But Skipper would be right here. And Kowalski would be over here. And finally, Rico, being the wild card he is, would most likely be right about here. Here. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say. Finally, we have O from Home. And with him, I would say that he has a pretty good shot at dying. Really. I mean, he is pretty good with move technology, but I haven't seen a single piece of move technology that's an attacking thing. And Boov have been known to cower in fear. They're nowhere near skilled fighters. And O himself, not that great of a mastermind. He's not smart. He's not a manipulator. He has no chance. When it comes to Queen Poppy and Branch from Trolls, I would say that they have a pretty good chance of defeating Poe, but really it's slight. Due to their size, they definitely would have to rely on strategy. Branch is a great strategist. Poppy is a good person to lure Poe into a false sense of security, and whether it is her will or not her will, Branch would probably take advantage of it and defeat Poe. But unfortunately, again, their size is a really big issue here. Branch would need time to set up a trap. He probably doesn't have that. And I would say that Poppy would be more likely to be friends with Poe, and I would agree that Poe would be friends with her. But if Poe was not given the option to be friends and only enemies, he would most likely defeat Poppy and Branch. When it comes to the boss baby, we know that he is in fact a master manipulator, but I would say that he has 0 fighting skills, and really other than maybe throwing Poe in jail, that's probably the best he could do. And Whooshy Fingerhold, death. That's it. Next, we have George Beard and Harold Hutchins. Just like a lot of other characters, they have a slight chance of defeating Poe, mainly due to the fact that their pranks can be very deadly. If Poe was to fall for any of their pranks, and I'm pretty sure they got a lot up their sleeve, they would most likely come out on top, and whether or not it's intentional, one of them would most likely be the one to kill him. The issue is that without those pranks, they're not very skilled fighters, and while they could probably get a laugh and distract Poe with jokes, I don't think that they would have enough smarts to get out of a situation where Poe comes out on top. Along with this, having fingers, Whooshy Fingerhold, boom, death. When it comes to Captain Underpants, he is also an immortal being who can only be defeated with a Whooshy Fingerhold, which is why he's actually below Bob. But he's still pretty close to the top of the list. Next, we have Everest. Being a giant yeti, Everest has a lot of muscles behind his punches, and he has some magic at his disposal, which means that he has a pretty good chance. If you've seen the Abominable TV show, that magic can be really powerful, but it also has a drawback in the fact that Everest doesn't really know how to control his magic, which would most likely result in him only having a slight chance. And I would say he belongs in, well, I don't know. Yeah, okay. I'm going to keep him there simply due to the fact that I don't know. If it came down to a fight between Everest and Puss in Boots, I'd see Puss coming out on top, but not Alex. But when it comes to Poe, he really only has a slight chance. And having fingers, Whooshy Fingerhold. It's gonna kill him. And same thing with Mr. Wolf, Whooshy Fingerhold. But Wolf has some other skills up his sleeve. Not only does he have claws, but he also has teeth, being a wolf. But he's also a con artist and a master manipulator. When it comes to fighting, unfortunately, he's not that great of a fighter, and he relies on Mr. Piranha to get the job done, which would most likely result in him only having a slight chance. Probably better than Spirit, but not as good as Private. And with that, you have my ranking of the DreamWorks Protagonists. Who can defeat Poe? Well, you got Jack Frost, Bob, and Captain Underpants due to the fact that they're immortal. Really, Captain Underpants' only weakness would be the Whooshy Fingerhold and the fact that he might be tricked by Poe. He's a lot dumber than Poe. Same thing with Bob, but unlike Captain Underpants, Bob can't be caught by the Whooshy Fingerhold. With Ginormica, she could easily squash Poe, and Mr. Peabody would be able to outsmart Poe pretty much every time, and being a fighter, he has a good chance against him. But when it comes to Hiccup and Toothless, working apart, they might not have a chance. Working together, thanks to their accuracy, Hiccup's swordsmanship, and of course, if it was a team battle, they would definitely be able to overtake Poe and probably be the ones to kill him. Add that to the fact that Toothless can't die by Whooshy Finger, but Hiccup can, yet he's being guarded by his sword. I would say that he has a pretty good chance of taking down Poe's Kung Fu. So, with that out of the way, that is the ranking for the DreamWorks protagonists in terms of fights to the death with Poe. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you want, you can use the link in the description to make your own tier list, and maybe you can comment down below as to who you think would be able to defeat Poe or who couldn't defeat Poe. And yeah, if you want me to do this again with TV show characters, let me know, and I will get to making that list. Until next video, I hope that you guys are staying safe out there, and please subscribe so you can stay up to date on all DreamWorks content. Until next time, bye!